Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:06. Thanks for tuning in here on this Friday morning to America's Morning Show. We got you covered over the next 4 hours, starting at 6:35 with Marc Morano on the latest push for climate stuff and how Ford is saying thanks but no thanks on EVs for the future. 7:05, Derek Anderson running for Congress in Virginia 7. 7:35, Al Corby is going to talk to you about building your own bunker. In fact, we're going to get into that in a moment. Why suddenly a new bunker craze? And then at 8:05, our friend Billboard Chris on some new studies related to children and medical interventions with regard to gender. And then at 8:35, Nick Minnock, Channel 7. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Patrice Onwuka.
I'm grooving out.
You're enjoying your
Friday,
David Bowie.
Yeah.
I like it when you like music of my era.
Your era is just, one era away from mine, right?
Exactly.
Something like that.
So here's how Fox News is reporting on this new trend. You know, you saw should we not be concerned that Mark Zuckerberg has built this elaborate bunker under his home in Hawaii?
We should absolutely be concerned because he knows something we do not.
Yes, he does. Others are doing it too. And Fox News had a report on this growing trend. You too can live out your real life Fallout 4 fantasy.
Well, call it paranoia or prudent planning. Tonight we show you some of the doomsday plans for the ultra-rich. Many of them are paying big bucks for state-of-the-art bunkers in hopes of surviving the apocalypse in style and keeping the rest of the world out. Correspondent Griff Jenkins has that story.
I mean, the Ritz-Carlton's underground.
How much are you willing to spend on a doomsday bunker? Want a ring of fire protecting you like a moat? Or water cannons to repel invaders? Modern-day bunker builders say, if you've got the dough, the sky's the limit.
Hold on. I'm going to let you finish, but I didn't realize I could have a ring of fire moat around my place.
I'm looking at this
you're talking.
crazy bunker that is surrounded by a moat of fire.
I'm looking at it as well.
You can have the moat of water,
Yeah.
but the fire, that is
but I've got to think that whatever oil or gasoline you're using to set the moat ablaze like that, I mean, I recognize it's a critical way to protect it. Eventually it's going to burn off and, the enemy will come. And shouldn't you use that gasoline and oil for something else?
Well, you've given
it looks awesome,
you
though.
have a head start because by the time the zombies or the aliens get to the edge, you set it on fire. They got to figure out how they're going to get across, how they're going to put the fire out. Meanwhile, you've gotten in your tunnel.
Yeah.
That you had Hamas built for you. Your tunnel that goes how many miles?
You have this all planned out. Meredith has been threatening to build some kind of bunker in our backyard for years now. We got to make sure she's not listening right now.
Healthy people in the U.S., they don't want to suffer if they go in a bomb shelter. They want basically an extension of their lifestyle in their bunker.
Ron Hubbard.
Is there anything more American than this?
There isn't.
It's like, all right, fine. If the Armageddon is coming and we're going to have to live in a bunker, at least let's make it comfortable.
No.
I need the niceties.
Not just comfortable, glamorous.
Luxurious.
We got to glam it up.
It's not about survival anymore.
No, because some of these are not underground. Some of these that I'm seeing are actually above ground, which defeats the purpose if there's like a nuclear attack.
So I've visited the Winston Churchill war rooms. It's actually a tourist thing now, but where Winston Churchill and he held his cabinet meetings there, and all of basically they managed the war from this bunker. It's barely underground, but it is. But it was pretty Spartan. I mean, he didn't have the luxury. It
didn't have a pool, a heated pool.
It didn't have the ring of fire. It didn't have the water cannons.
The CEO of Atlas Survivor Shelters saw a spike in demand when the Ukraine war started, and again when war broke out in Gaza. Other fears driving this trend: World War III, a terror attack, and a power grid collapse. But builder Al Corby says his biggest concern is something entirely different.
Every geopolitical jurisdiction should be concerned about is civil unrest. It isn't a foreign invasion anymore. That idea that the Russians are coming. No, They're not.
Hubbard built
The Russians are here.
Actually, we have an invasion of our southern border, but that's beside the point.
Well, I think that's part of the key that he's making. But also, if you saw during the 2020 Black Lives Matter riots, if you saw, and listen, the harrowing images of people, the couple in the front yard of their St. Louis estate, having to fend off rioters with their own firearms, I think sort of tells the story of what a lot of Americans are feeling. And I think Mr. Corby has a point here. By the way, not uncoincidentally, Mr. Corby will be joining us at 7:35 to talk about more details of this. But let's listen a little bit more.
Bunkers across the economic spectrum, from the average buyer to the billionaire. This one in Texas ran about $400K.
What?
The inside, a far cry from the Cold War era shelters. For $20,000, you can get the basic bomb shelter. Dig a little deeper in your wallet, and you can get the $100,000 big boy bunker.
All right, here's what I need. I need to hear from our family out there listening right now, because I assure you,
somebody's got one.
There's not a small number of people right now listening to our broadcast who are like, I don't see what's so funny about this.
I want to know.
We have a bunker pretty much like this already built.
So I want to know what their bunker looks like and what do they have in there. From
what are you
food
keeping
and
in your
clothing,
bunker? Yeah, you want to know how many outfits you can bring.
Thank you.
888-630-9625. Do you have, do you call it a bunker? Is it a shelter? Is it just a place where you store your year's worth of meals just in case? Whatever flavor of emergency, disaster, doomsday protocol you've put in place right now on your property. 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Have you considered doing something like this?
We have actually talked about it.
Yeah? I think everybody
has.
We
haven't taken it too seriously, but in the back of your mind, after 2020, when we saw that everything was shut down, we obviously said, okay, we need to stockpile, number one, always have that. We always want to have a freezer full of stuff. Now, in case there's no electricity, we'll have to figure out what to do with all that frozen meat.
Right.
But yeah, now if I were to design my own bunker, Larry, think of Barbie bunker.
Oh, God.
It's going to be like Barbie Dreamland underground. It will have a revolving. Well, there goes the electricity thing. Maybe a revolving outfit. Rack that I can
closet,
put all of my,
like a walk-in closet
my
thing?
Clothes on.
You realize
and it doesn't need to be electric. It can be hand operated.
So you're a family of 5 and you're the only woman.
Yes.
You're going to force all the men to live in the the Barbie dream world.
They're going to be happy with me.
Will they? Will they?
We'll put the toys for the boys. My husband will have some golf stuff that he could putt around and practice with. Yeah, they'll be good.
Meredith is from Oklahoma.
Okay.
So our understanding in our relationship is she's in charge of security, firearms, and doomsday preparation.
Okay.
We have you got to divide responsibilities in a family.
I like it.
And so our house we have security cameras everywhere in our home, constantly monitoring everything that goes on, and it has come in handy for us, especially with as much as we travel.
Yeah.
We have uninterrupted power supplies on every vital apparatus. Now, much of that is for me when I'm broadcasting from home. We moved in during the pandemic when we were all at home. So at any given time, if I'm on the air, the only thing that will stop me from continuing to be on the air is if the internet for the entire region goes down, But if our home loses power, everything stays on. We've got everything set up there. She wants a generator.
I think it's a good idea. We've been talking about getting one. No, I agree.
She has been trying to talk me into getting a generator for a couple of years now.
I think
so that means we got to leave diesel. We got to store diesel fuel on the property to
get a shed.
I have a shed. It's full of the stuff that I need right now.
Well, put your diesel in the shed.
Nothing unsafe about that. All right. Well, you tell me. Do I need? And then she does. She really does want. It's like, I would like to convert our backyard into a beautiful swimming pool and party area. She wants to turn it into a bunker. So you tell me, should we? Is that what you're doing? Do you have a bunker? What is in it? How elaborate is it? And are you interested in one of these billionaire luxury bunkers? 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL at 6:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Diamonds are formed by pressure, but not sold that way at Mervis. See the best quality at Mervis Diamond Importers.
News is brought to you by New Look Home Design.
WMAL's Free Speech Forum is back Sunday, June 2nd at the Birchmere. Details online now at WMAL.com/Free Speech Forum.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that ring of fire around my bunker. I do like the idea of a flaming moat.
Because it keeps away the vampires, right? And the zombies, is that correct?
I think that most people, when they think about their bunker, they're thinking of civil unrest, they're thinking of the power grid. You're going right to the zombies.
I'm going to the zombies, in part because I'm watching these doomsday bunkers, and some of these people are doing it because they worry about a zombie apocalypse, whether that's going to happen.
I think there are things to worry about. I don't know if the zombie apocalypse is necessarily in the top 10, but there are. I'll be honest. I used to laugh at Meredith about this and sort of brush it off, but lately I'm like, all right, talk to me. Let's lay out the details of this. What will the bunker look like exactly? It's so funny that every time we think it through, I always put in my mind, okay, well, how are we going to make it work so that we can still be on the air and stuff? And I'm realizing, hold on, if all this is going down. I don't know if we're
being
still
on air is
I don't know if we're on the
best.
air at all, actually, although there are emergency broadcast system protocols that we do jump into. But at that it's funny. This is why you should always have a transistor radio.
That's right.
With batteries and backup batteries. It's like right now the way you receive our broadcast might be, it's a luxury to be able to receive it either on the app or streaming or on your device or what have you, even in your car if you're getting your car, because who knows if you've got gasoline, but you should always have transistor radios. So, remember C. Crane used to advertise the hand crank radio in case there's a disaster?
I don't know.
See, you didn't listen to Art Bell at 2:30 in the morning like I did.
I did used to listen to him around 4 a.m. if he was on that late.
Yeah, there you go.
In the morning.
There you go. All right. Jeff in Hagerstown says his neighbor has a bunker. Hold on. Camp David doesn't count, Jeff. I know he's got a bunker. Hey, Jeff.
That's beautiful. Hey, good morning, Larry. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. So, the guy up the street, it's got to be something that's left over from the Cold War. The houses in my neighborhood are fairly old. Mine was built in 41. Anyway, this thing is, you want to call basic. This is basic.
Okay. Yeah.
This thing is a gigantic barrel underground that has 4, I guess you could call it 4 systems for like bunk beds. It's like it represents 2 bunk beds.
Like a really Spartan sort of crude, like in a submarine, like where they would bunk. But has he? It's still the same, Jeff. He hasn't turned this into like an elaborate man cave.
I would say I was falling in and out. It's about the size of a Gemini space capsule is what it is.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Well, Jeff, I wonder, do you think that he might have some, that house was originally built, someone lived there that had some sort of connection to the military or the government or intelligence?
It's highly possible.
Yeah.
Now, I for one, I'll get in my underground cellar and I'll die from radon before I die from nuclear. So it's all good.
All right. At least you have a plan, Jeff. That's all that matters.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Thanks, man. Have a good weekend. Evan in Chantilly has some tips for my bunker. Thanks, Evan. You're on.
Yeah. Hey, Larry. So propane is a much better fuel to store. Diesel spills. Diesel gets old. It ages. You have to worry about water intrusion, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Propane's a much better fuel to store.
So a propane-powered generator is what you're suggesting.
Absolutely.
All right,
Okay.
thanks. Did Meredith put you up to this, dude?
Not at all, because I've got one for you as well. That swimming pool you want, that swimming pool you're looking for is a $50,000 emergency water reservoir.
Ooh,
that's
see?
a good idea.
So we can have both. So I'm gonna have to do this show for the next 2 decades to pay for all of this.
Yep, complete with filtering and sanitation built into it.
That's actually not a bad idea, Evan. All right, thank you for that.
Love it.
One of my favorite video games is Fallout 4, and there's sort of it's supposed to be after the nuclear war, and you were put into a cryogenic freeze in this very elaborate shelter.
Oh, now I gotta look this up.
Some of the time is spent in the shelter, but you're out in the nuclear-ridden Badlands trying to fight off all of them. There are, in fact,
I see what you're talking
there
about.
There are nuclear affected or
People?
radiated zombies and things like. It's pretty fun, and now we can just sort of live it out in our backyard on our own.
It sounds
Why
like
not?
a man's dream, right? If you are into this,
Yes,
the
yes,
action,
Patrice, it is a man's dream until you come in and paint everything pink and have your
We'll leave one
rotating
wall blue. How about
Malibu
that?
Barbie closet with all. You're not going to need an evening gown after the
Who said
apocalypse.
we need evening gowns? Just cute day outfits. Thank you.
As I mentioned, coming up at 7:35, we'll talk to Al Corby about these bunkers, the reality of them, and also how elaborate they can get. He builds these things. It's 6:23.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's now 6:37. Thanks so much for being part of our morning extravaganza here. It's O'Connor and Company. We like to call it America's Morning Show. Coming up at 7:05. You know that's because you can hear it anywhere in America.
That's right. And we have listeners, you said globally.
Globally, absolutely.
Yeah.
We hear from people overseas, in London.
So
people
this could
listen.
be their afternoon show.
We've had listeners in China who are there.
Really?
Well, they're working
Gotcha.
for probably for agencies that aren't supposed to be working in China, actually. So I should shut my mouth. Coming up later this morning at 7:05, Derek Anderson running for Congress. He's a former Green Beret. He might know something about that. 7:35, Al Corby, as we just mentioned, about your billionaire bunker. And then at 8:05, Billboard Chris will join us, and 8:35, Nick Minnock of Channel 7 right here locally in the Washington area. I'm Larry O'Connor, and so is Patrice Onwuka.
And it's a happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. I just said... I said, I'm Larry O'Connor, and so is Patrice Onwuka, which means that you're also Larry O'Connor. Oh, boy, oh, boy.
It's Friday. It's okay.
It is, and I'd love to say that, last show of the week. But actually, I'd like to take a moment to let you know, speaking of bunkers, that tonight I'll be occupying Mark Levin's hidden bunker. Oh. And I'll be filling in for the great one tonight from 6 to 9 right here on WMAL. All right, let's get right to it with Marc Morano. He, of course, is the proprietor of Climate Depot. And Mark, I don't know if you heard from our brilliant vice president yesterday. Here, take a listen. This is Kamala Harris as she was announcing some $20 billion of green something or other.
When President Biden and I first ran for office, folks told us we have to take on the climate crisis, and we have to also lower monthly energy bills.
Hey, Mark, how's that working out?
This is the bizarro world. I mean, this all you can do. When they were first elected, Biden's goal was to shut down fossil fuel development for the magical beliefs of all this. Solar and wind are cheaper. They're going to take over, and it's going to be wonderful. This is a complete break from reality. But they're believing this rhetoric. The more reality hits them, the more they literally double and triple down. Electricity costs up almost 30% just in the last 3 years since Biden was in. Gas prices are up almost 50%. And this is all due to not only his energy policy, you could argue his foreign policy and all the other things he's done, but they keep doubling down. There was a UCLA historian, Saul Friedlander, who wrote about the totalitarian regimes of the 20th century. And what he said is they use the bureaucracy to enforce magical beliefs. The entire green agenda is magical beliefs. Oh, we're going to just ban gas-powered cars and we're going to replace them. And the idea is, it's like Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier, right? If you're going to, I'm the greatest of all time. They claim green energy is great. They claim EVs are great. But imagine if Muhammad Ali, they banned his competition or something. They would never, that's what they've done. Green energy, they're banning fossil fuels. They're banning gas-powered cars. At the same time, they're claiming they're the number one, but they won't allow any competition at this point. We're in a mess here.
Talk about a mess, Mark. We were talking yesterday just about the fact that, President Biden is not going to replenish our energy reserves because he says it's too costly to do so right now. And when we look at gas prices that are continuing to rise, I believe any of the gains, meaning, lower prices, have been erased. We're back to levels from last year and climbing with over $5 again in California. Is this what the vice president meant about reducing our energy bills? I mean, is this the outcome that Americans should expect as being progress from the Biden administration?
I mean, it's just like, again, they say the opposite of what you, I mean, it just makes no sense that they can make that claim. And yeah, the reason he can't fill Strategic Petroleum Reserve is gas is, 50% higher than a couple years ago. Donald Trump was brilliant. He filled it back, I believe it was 2019, when gas was relatively historically low.
It was during the pandemic. He got criticized for it. It was after the lockdown when oil prices cratered. I want to say it was June of 2020.
They cratered.
Yeah.
June of 2020, yeah. And people said, why are you doing that? And why would you waste time and money on that? And Donald Trump was a visionary and saw it. He filled it up to record levels. And when do you think it was drained to record lows? During the midterm elections, when Joe Biden wanted to lower gas prices to help Democrats, he used it as a political ploy, our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and now we're at the lowest levels since the 1970s.
Yeah.
This is just another example. They will say and do anything to promote this green agenda. Now, what's interesting is in Europe, this is collapsing. You have the EU, because of the protesting farmers, stripping out and halting the European version of the Green New Deal. Let's hope that happens here. I'd love to see U.S. farmers on tractors descending on the Capitol at some point here in the United States, because it's working in Europe.
So what does that look like here if we do get an administration? Because I honestly, sadly, too many Republicans in this town are terrified to be lectured to by George Stephanopoulos or Jake Tapper. They go along with this stuff too. It's just sort of at a slower pace than what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders want to do. But is there a stomach amongst the Republicans when they get a larger majority, and if they get the White House to say, no, enough with this. This is a waste of money, and it's actually harming the environment in many cases, and we're going to go back to common sense, sensible energy policies that says no, like many countries in Europe are doing, to this climate hysteria?
Well, Larry, that is the question. I worked in the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. Back in 2007 and 2008, specifically in 2009, even when President Obama was pushing the cap and trade, Republican staff and senators would be like, well, we got to be careful. We can't say anything bad about the climate because we don't want to be seen as against the environment. So that's always been their guiding principle. They've been very timid on this issue. Yeah. Most Republican presidents, the most liberal member of their administration has always been the EPA because they don't want to be seen as against the environment. Now, what's most fascinating about the Republicans is there are so many good members, but the best thing to happen is losing Kevin McCarthy, losing Mitch McConnell as our leadership. Kevin McCarthy would say, Republicans believe climate's a problem, and we have a solution. We're going to plant trees, and we're going to capture carbon. They would never challenge the narrative. And the same thing has happened for decades in Europe. The Conservative Party in the UK sounds like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden on climate.
Right.
They don't want to challenge the narrative. Unless you challenge the premise in the narrative, you're exactly right, Larry. They're going to just be doing, that's going too far. They're Me Too Republicans. They don't challenge it, and they essentially want the Green New Deal light instead of challenging it and reversing all of this.
They got to stop accepting this premise. They got to challenge the narrative and shoot everything through the lens of America first and what's in the best interest of the American people.
Yeah.
And once you ask that question, it sort of answers itself. Marc Morano, Climate Depot. Got to leave it there. Thank you,
Mark.
sir. All right, we're down to the final four teams of the NCAA championships, men's and women's. And the women's NCAA has been doing really well.
Yeah,
Caitlin
getting
Clark
a lot of
of
attention.
Iowa is literally the highest scoring college basketball player of all time.
Wow.
That Iowa team, there's a lot of fans behind it. So suddenly women's college basketball is getting a lot of great attention. I want to take a quick moment to recognize the fact, however, that if they let men play in the women's leagues,
this would all be erased.
It would ruin it. It would ruin it all. It would ruin it all. That said, listen to Kamala. Kamala Harris is now trying to glom on to the popularity of the women's NCAA college basketball tournament here, and she had some interesting things to say.
Do you know? Okay, a bit of a history lesson.
We're going to get a history lesson from Kamala Harris.
Here we go.
You know this is going to be good.
You know that the women's teams were not allowed to have brackets until 2022. Think about that. And talk about progress, better late than never, but progress.
All right. So This is just a complete and total lie.
Another need to fact check this woman. Come on now.
A total lie. First of all, how exactly do you do a tournament without brackets? They've been doing the tournament since, like, I think the 80s or 90s. They've had the women's basketball tournament as well as the men's basketball tournament. It's literally impossible to do a tournament without brackets, right? First round, second round, third round until you get down. Now, there was a time where they didn't field a full 64 teams like the men did. But by the way, neither did the men. When the NCAA men's tournament started back in the 60s and 70s, they only had 32 teams, just like the women did. And then men went to 64. Eventually, women have gotten to 64. Okay. I vividly remember, you know how Obama would always do his March Madness bracket thing with ESPN? It was that
personal side of him.
He would do an ESPN, and he would do a men's bracket, and he would do a women's bracket. I literally, I'm looking at the Obama White House archive, and they have his 2012 women's bracket right here that I'm looking at. I'm staring at the women's bracket. So, I mean, Kamala.
Do you know that the women's teams were not allowed to have brackets until 2022?
So here's what happened. One of her crack staffers went to Wikipedia. And if you read Wikipedia, it says beginning in 2022, the women's tournament used the same selection process for a field of 66, I think they do now, with a play-in game ahead of time, that the men's do. In other words, it makes it sound like in 2022 they just started doing a bracketed tournament like the men. No. The only thing is, in 2022, the women used the identical same selection process with 32 automatic bids and then 32 at large and all of that stuff that the men's did. But it's not like they didn't have a tournament bracket before then. She's just an ignoramus, but she's an ignoramus attempting to, again, create controversy that doesn't exist and divide along gender lines in this case, or sex lines, by saying, you know, they just started letting the women do a bracket. Up until then, well, we weren't making any progress. It's just a lie. It's outrageous.
Well, what's more outrageous is that she and her boss can't have it both ways. What is a woman? What are the sex differences between men and women to justify having a men's basketball team and a women's basketball team, a women's league, and for biological men not to play in the women's league? By the way, Title IX created a lot of the women's sports opportunities, and she and her boss have been delaying new regulations that would undermine Title IX and make it easy for a biological male to engage in female sports.
Patrice,
so what is a woman? Can she even answer that before telling me anything about how progress there is in creating brackets for the NCAA basketball team?
Patrice, I hate...
I'm sorry to shout this.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt your passion here, but you need to be lectured to more by the smartest woman in America. There's more.
But you know what? Just how we love March Madness, and even just now allowing the women to have brackets, and what that does to encourage people to talk more about the women's teams, to watch them. Now they're being covered, you know, and this is the reality. People used to say, "Oh, women's sports, who's interested?" Well, if you can't see it, you won't be. But when you see it, you realize, oh.
ESPN's been covering women's basketball for like 20 years. Oh, people used to say, who cares about women's sports? Really? How about Olympic gymnastics?
That's right.
How about Olympic figure skating?
There are a lot of women's sports that get a lot of coverage.
Of course they do.
She's the one who's speaking like a sexist here.
Well, here's what's interesting. And I just pointed out women's tennis, women's gymnastics, women's figure skating have always been incredibly popular sports.
Absolutely.
And do you know why? Because those are women who are not trying to be men.
Yes.
They are not trying to play a sport and do exactly what the men's do. It is an actually distinct and different sport than the men's version of those sports. And that's the difference here. But no, we have to... Women have it so good in women athletics right now that they have to make up a lie that they didn't have a bracket for their basketball tournament until 2 years ago.
But when you see it, you realize, oh.
It's 6:54.